Recently, the news has been about the turmoil in Melbourne's property market, leaving nothing but discontent for investors. Increased taxes are the last straw breaking the back of property investors in Victoria. I didn't buy 5 investment properties, I bought 5 debts. Sales of new builds plummet as investors flee. Melbourne's land tax forces factories to relocate to other states. Such stories are becoming all too common.
The Herald Sun reports that Victorian business is going backwards, with a number of new startups trailing every other state and territory.
In recent years, Melbourne's property prices have lagged behind other Australian cities. What used to be a robust market is now flattering. What are the 6 key reasons for Melbourne's weakening property trend? Is there still hope for investing in Melbourne's real estate market? 6 major changes will shape the city's market performance in the coming years. For those interested in Melbourne's property scene, today's content is something you otherwise have to hear in a top university. Hi, my name is Alex. Welcome to Aus Property Strategy, where I share information about real estate investment, economic trends, and wealth creation. If you like this video, smash the subscribe button to turn on the notification bell to watch new weekly videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1. Land tax threshold reduction. The first reason for Melbourne's recent property market downturn is the land tax. A property manager in Melbourne's southwest complains about losing 52 clients in the past year. For those unfamiliar with property management in Australia, a property manager typically manages up to 120 properties. Those managing 150 are considered superhuman. Losing 52 clients means a 40% drop in business. The reason? Land tax. Due to poor financial management compounded by pandemic-related spending, Victoria's fiscal situation is the worst in Australia. The Victorian government introduced a pandemic debt repayment plan to cover the deficit in its May 2023 budget. Simply put, they plan to increase taxes over the next 10 years to fill this fiscal gap. Whose taxes? The usual targets of the Labour Party are large businesses, investors, and those who pay land tax. If you're a business owner and a property investor, it's terrible news. It's like redistributing wealth from the rich to the poor, except many property investors aren't wealthy at all. The money ends up in the government's account instead of the Victorian residents. The change involved slashing land tax threshold for investment properties from $300,000 to $50,000. If you own an investment property in Victoria, you'll likely be paying land tax because even an apartment could exceed the $50,000 land value threshold. Number 2. Overseas vacancy tax doubles. Aligning with New South Wales from January 1st, 2024, Victoria increased the absentee owner surcharge from 2% to 4%. If you're not an Australian citizen or permanent resident and don't regularly reside in Australia, you'll be subject to this tax. Unlike New South Wales' requirement to reside continuously for 200 days, Victoria's tax is conditioned on being in Australia on December 31st and staying at least half a year, totaling 183 days. Number 3. Rent cap. In July last year, the Victorian government proposed a cap on the frequency of rent increases for rental properties, limiting it to once every 2 years. This announcement sent shockwaves through the market. Before 2019, it was possible in Victoria to raise rents every 6 months. Upon hearing this news, many property investors considered selling their properties and exiting the market. Fortunately, the government did not pass it, and the status quo of being able to increase rents once a year remains, which was a relief for many. However, this still highlighted to property investors just how dire the financial straits of the Labour government are, with policies that could change at the drop of a hat, scaring away a segment of property investors. Number 4. Short-term rental tax. Also in July last year, the Victorian government proposed a bill to impose the $5 surcharge per transaction on short-term rentals like Airbnb, which was later modified to 7.5% of the rental income. Although the bill has not yet been submitted to the Victorian Parliament for review, it is widely believed that this tax will start to be levied from January 1st, 2025. The higher charges are likely to intensify investors' withdrawal from the market. Number 5. Expansion of the vacancy tax statewide. Jacinta Allen, the new Premier of Victoria, lived up to the expectations. Barely settled into her role, she announced a 5th tax on investment properties, sparkling outrage among investors across the state. The vacant residential land tax in Victoria isn't a new tax, but an expansion of the tax base. Initially, this tax was levied only in Melbourne's inner suburbs, such as Melbourne, Monash, and Port Phillip, taxing vacant properties at 1% of their total value annually. Not just the land, but the combined value of the land and building. In Victoria, this tax is not calculated on the market price, but on the capital improved value (CIV) listed on council rate bills. For instance, a property worth $1 million left unoccupied for 6 months would incur a 1% vacancy tax paid annually. This substantial expense stands as a separate tax from land tax surcharge, and the federal government's vacancy tax, applying to all, whether local or foreign landlords. Now, this rule has changed. The vacancy tax will no longer apply just to those inner city areas, but will expand across all of Australia. Starting from January the 1st, 2025, any property in Victoria left vacant for 6 months will incur this tax. And it doesn't stop there. From January the 1st, 2026, the scope of the vacancy tax will expand again, not geographically, since all of Victoria is already included. But this time, it targets vacant residential land in the greater Melbourne area. If vacant land is not developed within 5 years, it will attract the vacancy tax. This will affect developers, land banking, individuals who purchase land but do not build, and even some government-held land. Number 6, council rates jump. All properties, whether owner-occupied or investment, must pay council rates. These rates are used for garbage collection and help keep public spaces clean. Victorian councils have traditionally increased these rates by about 1.7% annually, within a state-allowed cap of 2%. However, for the fiscal year 2023 to 24, this cap was doubled to 3.5%. For instance, in the southwestern Melbourne suburb of Werribee, the Wyndham City Council raised the rates by 3.5%. Melbourne has the highest stamp duty in Australia and a significant increase in property holding costs, which explains the status of the current property market. It's no wonder investors are selling off their properties in Victoria and looking elsewhere. Is this trend temporary, or is there still hope for the Melbourne property market to rise again? Is investing in Melbourne real estate still worthwhile? There are 6 aspects to consider. Number 1. Trends within trends. Firstly, Melbourne's property market is growing slower than the others among Australia's 8 major cities. According to February's CoreLogic's data, Melbourne ranks second last among these cities, with a monthly price increase of just 0.1%, ahead only of Hobart as minus 0.3%, and on par with Darwin. Melbourne's pace doesn't compare with the leading cities in terms of price increases. However, this data reflects the average across all properties in Melbourne and does not represent every property. In every rising market, there are homes that sell at reduced prices, and in every falling market, there are properties that perform well. According to statistics from the real estate website, the best performing areas in Melbourne in 2023 saw increases of up to 10%. Therefore, the real issue isn't the broader market environment, but knowing how to find the right properties. Number 2, cyclical factors. The Australian property market varies significantly from city to city, each with its own cycle. Currently, Brisbane and Perth are in an upward cycle, while Melbourne and Sydney are nearing the bottom of this market cycle. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. Sydney's property market is well known for its rapid growth, but in recent months, it hasn't risen as quickly as Brisbane or Perth. Property trends in Australia show short-term fluctuations, but a consistent long-term upward trajectory. My in-house data analysis team found that over the 18 years to 2021, Melbourne's average annual property price growth was 6.27%, higher than Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth. Of course, I'm not saying Melbourne will outperform other cities in the future. I'm not a fortune teller, but looking at the long term, Melbourne's market will recover sooner or later. Number 3, fundamentals. My summary of what drives property price increases is residents' leverage ratio. Leverage is easy to understand. It's all about financial and credit factors. Easier credit conditions and lower interest rates means people can borrow more money, which naturally enables them to afford more expensive homes. Human nature is such that if people can't afford more expensive homes, they will go buy them, leading to rising property prices. However, while leverage affects all cities and individuals across Australia, what really has a targeted impact on Melbourne is the residence factor. A place with a declining population can't sustain property prices. Only population growth can increase the demand for housing. Melbourne needs to attract more people for immigration, education, employment, and entrepreneurship. This influx is essential to stimulate economic development and drive up property prices. People come to Melbourne for a better life, and the word better encompasses many aspects: education, healthcare, safety, retirement facilities, job opportunities, entertainment, even culture and weather. Of course, Melbourne's weather is my least favorite among the 8 cities. We can't change natural conditions, but there's significant room for improvement in other areas. Whether Victoria can enhance its appeal and prevent people from relocating to Brisbane or Perth remains to be seen, depending on the actions of the Victorian government. Number 4, political shifts. For the property investment environment in Victoria to improve, it's essential for the state government to reduce its debts. The Labor Party has governed Victoria for many years, and economic management is not their strong suit. During the pandemic, Melbourne got the crown of the world's longest lockdown city, and the government had to issue debt to fund expenses. Now, Victoria's government is burdened with significant debt, showing no signs of improvement. This prompted the introduction of a 10-year debt repayment plan in the 2023 budget, targeting the wealthy, including property investors. This is one fundamental reason why Melbourne is currently not property investor friendly. If Victoria's economy could improve and its debt reduced, easing the pressure on property investors, we could start to breathe and grow. The federal government has already taken the first step by distributing a portion of the GST collected to the state each year. This is a pattern in Australia, where states with high mining revenue receive a smaller share of GST. This year, Melbourne is the biggest winner of GST distribution, receiving an additional $3.7 billion in the 2024-25 fiscal year. Under the Labour government, it seems that those who are poor get benefits while the wealthy don't. I hope Victoria never starts mining, so the rest of the country will keep supporting them. As a Sydney resident, spending my hard-earned money to support another state for no reason sounds terrible. For healthy economic development, perhaps it's time for a change. Number 5. Policy factors. The cost of purchasing a property in Victoria, including stamp duty and surcharge, is the highest in Australia. The threshold for land tax is the lowest, affecting nearly all investment properties. Considering all costs, Melbourne's investment properties are among the most expensive to hold. Thus, the state taxes such as stamp duty and its surcharge could be areas for change, perhaps lowering them a bit. Any reduction in these costs would need to be offset elsewhere. So ultimately, relaxing policies depends on Melbourne's economic improving and debt decreasing. Number 6. Waiting for the right moment. 2 adjacent suburbs. Properties in Suburb A have high prices and Suburb B has low prices. Then property prices in Suburb B will begin to rise and eventually align with Suburb A. This is known as the ripple effect, where prices propagate upward like water waves. This principle also applies between cities. Why are people moving from Sydney and Melbourne to Brisbane and Perth? Because of lower housing prices and living costs, comparable incomes, less work, and a better quality of life. The most significant portion of living costs is housing. Currently, Melbourne's average house price ranks 4th in Australia, after Sydney, Canberra, and Brisbane at $778,000. Adelaide and Perth are close behind and could surpass Melbourne by the second half of this year. If Melbourne's property prices fall to the 3rd lowest among the 8 major cities, it will become highly competitive nationally. People seeking a better life might move to Melbourne, and once the population increases, property prices will follow. To summarize, Melbourne's market is at a low point, with the highest investment property holding costs in Australia and recent years' price growth lagging behind other cities. Issues including policies, economy, debts, and population are present, but these also lay a solid foundation for future growth. In the long term, Melbourne holds great potential. Remember, while the Australian property market experiences short-term fluctuations, it has consistently grown over the long term. When confidence is low, it might be the best time to enter the market. However, please don't rush to buy property based on my opinion. Do your own research and consult a professional. If you made it this far, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Turn on the notification bell to watch new weekly videos. Have a good one. Bye-bye.